Last class we saw sort of a problem for externalism in terms of figuring out how to divide up processes into different chunks. That was a problem, but it wasn't an objection in the sense that it didn't say that externalism made a certain prediction and that prediction's wrong. This clairvoyance objection that Bonjour brings up is a clear-cut attempt at an objection. It's the kind of thing that goes like this. It says that, look, there are reliable processes of belief formation that do not seem to lead to justified beliefs. And this is because an agent has no cognitive grasp of their reliability. So the idea is there are beliefs that are unjustified that might be formed by possibly reliable processes. If that's the case, then externalism or then reliabilism has to be false. So here's the case of Norman. I'm just going to read the whole case as Bonjour gives it. Norman, under certain conditions that usually obtain, is a completely reliable clairvoyant with respect to certain kinds of subject matter. He possesses no evidence or reasons of any kind for or against the general possibility of such a cognitive power, or for or against the thesis that he possesses it. One day, Norman comes to believe that the president is in New York City, though he has no evidence either for or against this belief. In fact, the belief is true and results from his clairvoyant power, under circumstances in which it is completely reliable. So the question is Norman's belief that the president of New York City justified or unjustified? Bonjour thinks his belief is, in fact, unjustified, though he says a reliabilist picture would predict the opposite. So reliabilism, if given this case as stipulated, is going to say, hey, Norman's belief is justified. Bonjour thinks, obviously, it's unjustified. So much the worse for reliabilism. So here's the intuition behind how this critique goes. The question I think Bonjour wants to ask is, why should some external relationship of reliability make Norman justified, when the fact that that relationship of reliability holds is outside his cognitive grasp? And Bonjour thinks that justification is closely linked to the perspective of the believer. So if the believer can't access the reason the belief is true, then he thinks, well, it's not going to be justified. Just because there's some rationale for a belief, that doesn't mean that it's justified if the believer doesn't have access to that rationale. That at least is the way that Bonjour thinks about things. So this is a very internalisty way of thinking, but he thinks the intuitions are with him when you consider a case like Norman's, which is supposed to be a counterexample and an objection to reliabilism.